What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tech Productions. Today I'm back on joined again by Fluff and Jake.
What's up, people?
What's going on, y'all?
And today we are talking about stuff because there's stuff to talk about, and it's been a while, so let's kind of get into it. For this week on the channel, we will see a couple profiles, Turtle School from last week, and then this week we're bringing on a cooler mill. We have a couple decks probably Fluff's gonna do. I'm not sure if he's done. Were you gonna do Topo?
I haven't profiled new Topo Lock.
Topo Lock and possibly
so
Zeno Sin.
Zeno, yeah.
Yeah. And then matchups on the channel for this week will be actually Zeno taking on Zamasu, the ultimate deck one. Then we have Angel 21 taking on Goteeks, and then Angel 21 again taking on Cooler Mill. So we got a variety of stuff. We'll see what's happening. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about shit. Primarily talk about the ban list, and what a crazy ban list that was. In all the ideas of a ban list, like, I'm okay with, because yes, they've banned leaders before, but they've always done it in waves. Like, they kind of try to, with two-turn hunt, you like, oh no more best of ones in this deck, only best of threes give people a chance, and then it's like, no, this deck's gone, taken out. And then, I don't remember, I think the original Mecha Frieza was actually just straight up hit, but when they brought it back as a reboot, they tried to do something, a fix, and then they just hit it again because it just wasn't working out. So the idea of straight up banning 3 leaders completely will change the format which we go forward to. But how do we feel about that? Like, we've talked about this before, and my biggest opinion of the decks wasn't the idea of the leaders being so strong, but it's the overall archetype. And is it better to just ban a leader than just trying to errata 5 different cards in each archetype to fix the deck? Maybe they'll bring out a reboot leader on the road that may change things up.
It's a very, in my opinion, it's a very lazy fix to a problem. Like if you look at least the 2 red decks that got hit, the 2 leaders read like mid leaders. They don't do anything incredibly broken from the leaders themselves. I guess Sin or SS4 Gogeta does kind of break a core mechanic of the game in being able to let you combo cards in rest mode. But other than that, the leaders aren't overly impressive. So the problem is fundamentally with the archetype, and even rebooting those leaders later on, we're still going to have the problem of those incredibly strong archetypes still exist with no fixes.
Yep. Like, go on, Jake, first.
I was going to say, I think that we kind of talked about this a little bit before, where all 3 of these leaders that got banned kind of broke the rules of the game a little bit, like letting you combo in rest mode or forcing you to play forcing you to pay energy to play battle cards in the case of Red Sin, and then getting around all of the blue restanding taxing effects with Gamma, being able to pick up stuff and put it back down and really kind of use your energy like a second hand. I think these 3 leaders and kind of like the game of Dragon Ball has just been in this format, I'll say, has been like the victim of these leaders' success, where it's hard to want to play anything else when you have like 3 leaders that basically like break the mechanics of the game, and it's hard to justify playing another leader in those colors. So like they've done these kind of bans before, I mean, where they're just breaking up a stagnant format.
Yeah, and like when we've gone over when we went over set 19 and set 19 cards, I think we even stated, like, with those 2 decks that came down, we're like, these decks do not, or 19, I think we did 20 as well, I can't remember, but we say that these decks do not beat set 18 red decks. Like, why would you play these newer red decks coming out when these decks are so much more superior? And I know, like, things we talked about, like, on the SS4, could they have removed the part of the auto when you play a 1-drop, so it forces them to actually have to pay an energy to play a 1-drop to get that draw and then combo it off to get another draw? Do you remove the combo power? Do you remove the auto when you combo this card, you draw a card? Like, it is a lot for, like, to think about how to fix that deck when that deck just potentially could just draw so much. And on Sin's case, we had talked about, like, do you add an extra energy charge to the 4-drop? Or sorry, not charge, but an extra red energy to the 4-drop, an extra red energy to the 8-drop. So it takes 2 red energy to play the 4-drop Sin, and it takes 3 to play the 8-drop. Or does that push it back into another, like, to a tier that's no longer relevant? But when I look at green decks, and I'm going to point out Super 17, because this is my reference, was that the 6-drop for Super 17, which is not as strong as the red drop Sin, that's 4-drop, costs 2 to play, and the big one costs 3 to play. So, like, you have to wait till potentially turn 3 or 4 to even go into those engines, where Sin can do that right on turn 2 for a lot of its stuff, which is really powerful. And then on Gamma, changing it to where you only take up 2 energy, not 3 energy. Is 3 energy too much? Because I know for a while, before the Silver Bullets, SS3 was really strong, which is always restaining those 3 energy. Like, you could tap out and go into your opponent's turn knowing, I'm safe. Do what you want. I got blue.
I think another, like, 2 points really quick. I think Gamma would be the easiest one to fix, and you would just adjust how many energy it picks up and puts down, and then maybe move the card draw aspect of that effect to the leader's actual swing, so the leader has to attack to gain hand advantage, like most other leaders in the game do. I think that would be the easiest one to fix. And also on, I completely lost my other point, actually. I think that Red Sin would still be relevant if you made all of the battle cards cost an additional energy. I think it would still be incredibly powerful and still be strong enough to be a red deck in consideration for forever, basically.
That was going to be my suggestion for Sin, is just make Dread Destroyer cost 4, make Dread Destroyer cost 2, and then make Omega cost 3. And that really fixes the tempo of the deck when you compare it to other colors.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the Nova. There's nothing wrong with the Ice. We banned Haze at this point because
it was the critical one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one that gave crit on activate battle speed.
Yeah.
So, it's I think that fixes that. I think SS4 is definitely the one that's more tricky because depending on your playstyle, you may perceive the 8-drop to be the problem. You may perceive the pay 1 play draw, combo draw cards to be the problem. You may perceive the whole archetype to be a problem. You may perceive the Z leader to be a problem. There's a lot there to go through, and I think SS4 is definitely the more complicated of the 3 to fix.
I know with banning the leaders, the Gohan promo was kind of saved because there was a lot of fear that they were going to errata that card to be only in mono character leaders, and it had to be a Saiyan leader, so a Saiyan mono character leader, and that just gets really overcomplicated when you start adding all of that. So that card got saved in the process because a lot of people were talking about how powerful that card was in combination of these 2 decks. There were 2 other cards that were banned. One being the SS4 Triumph together, which, I mean, I never really...
Uninteractable boss monster that clears the field, pressures the opponent. You can't do anything in response to it.
Yeah, I mean, that is the only problem with that card.
Fun.
Was the fact that, yes. But their main concern for that card was that with the new Secret Rare coming out, it's going to be a 1 of in every deck, a 4 of every deck. Just if you see it, just mean you play it and boom, you go into its swings, and your opponent can't activate skills to get to the swing, And yeah. The other one being Dirty Burst, which I never really thought was a problem, but this is the second time we've had to record this video, so Fluff brought up some good points beforehand, so I'll let him kind of talk about why he agrees with this ban.
Dirty Burst is one of those cards that, like cards like minus Keeley Zone and stuff like that, there's no interaction to that card. Let's say that I'm a player, I'm running a boss monster deck. So I tap my energy, I play my boss monster, my opponent spends 2 on Dirty Burst. I've now wasted my turn. I've put a card on the field that I can't use. my energy is used up, and there's no way that I can interact with that. The equivalent to Dirty Burst is something like Big Amore in green, which has to be done preemptively. And if I'm now that boss monster player, after my opponent's activated Big Amore, I'm going to choose other ways to spend my turn, as opposed to going into that boss monster. I have to rethink around the strategy for it. So in that regard, Dirty Burst has no answers. And people can go, oh, well, but you have counters. But think in the option of yellow. To play a yellow card that is 7 or higher, you're going to spend at least 3 energy in most situations. And then to be able to use Cooler against it, you're spending an additional 3. So you need to have 6 energy available to be able to respond to Dirty Burst, to do anything to it. And that's just not the way this game works. Like, games are done on turn 5 most of the time.
Yeah, another good point is that cards like Big Amore only have one mode, where if you main board Dirty Burst and you run up against a deck with no big monsters, it's still, or no big battle cards, it's still a 1-cost negate.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fine in blue. We played Whisa's Coercion for years. You know what I mean? Like, Dirty Burst is a good card in either mode, and the tax that you have to put on the rest of your deck for playing it is very low, and it can even take slots from something like Dimension Magic, which again only has one mode. Granted, you can spark it, but Dimension Magic is only going to negate attacks. Fluff actually reminded me of my point that I was going to make earlier, in another reason I think that these 3 leaders have been banned. We lost Champa, and Majin Buu got limited to 1 recently, and these were both tools that control decks would use to win those matchups, where you would let Sin take itself to 3 life, Z Awaken, chip it a damage, or make it negate with testing the opposition or something, and then come in with your leader and combo your 14-card hand and kill them because you've been sitting back the whole game. That is no longer an option with Champa gone. Blue decks were putting up a wall with Majin Buu, and Gamma benefited from this too a little bit as well, but I think that Majin Buu being played against Gamma, where you're playing that big cell for your whole turn and it doesn't have barrier and it's just going to get removed, like, Champa and Majin Buu, while these were powerful tools that these decks used that propped them up, they were also really strong against these 3 leaders. And the fact that those cards have pretty much left the format as well made these decks even more dominant, as opposed to less, which is part of what I think those cards being limited and banned was for.
So, with Dirty Burst being hit, my opinion is, if you're afraid of boss monsters, attack against and move phobos again, it's the same amount of energy. They will still get the auto if they have an auto pending on swing, but it does stop the attack, and it keeps the card kind of in a null spot until the end of your opponent's turn. So, we
could even be better, depending on what's swinging at you.
Yeah. 1 errata outside of the set 20 erratas was for the Zeno Universe Control, which, sure, as a Grand Priest player, hit the cards that are for that deck, but the reason why it's hit for that deck, because the activate main to play that for 1 energy could just be played in any deck as long as you have 3 energy. And then the auto itself will proc, and you can choose up to 12 of your opponent's Universe God cards, ignoring or gets past Indestructible and warps will remove from the game. And the problem with that, though, is that the ultimate deck was coming out, which is the deck they're trying to push. And if they kept that card at its full power, everyone would just tech in these in your sideboard. You side these in against the ultimate decks, or even in this case, like, Universe 7 is going to see more play because SS4 is gone, Sin is gone. So we'll see Universe 7 coming back, and you just pay 1 energy by your board. So making it so it has to be 12 cards is a little bit much, but sure, you're never going to pull that off. But hey, if you do, congrats somehow.
Yeah, the fact that, or after playing Battle Spirits and that game has a 10-card sideboard, coming back to Dragon Ball and having a 15-card sideboard feels like a lot. So if these Zenos were left untouched, I could see players putting 1 or 2 in every sideboard, and if they run up against a God or Universe strategy, just bring them in and go crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing it got hit.
Yeah, it really, Bancroft touched on this, but it just caused that ultimate deck to be dead on a run. And there's no way to adequately move product. Like, I don't know how good that deck is going to even be. I haven't had a chance to test it. So that deck, may already be struggling to be a competitively viable deck. And then you top it off with the fact that there's a card that just instantly answers your indestructible God cards, and you're screwed.
So all the cards we kind of talked about and kind of discussed a little bit won't actually go into effect until the pre-release of Series 4. But at our shop, we just go ahead and put it into effect, so that way we're ready for it. If someone's going to an event or participate in an event that's before this day and they want to test it, we're down to test it with them. But at our locals, we just go ahead and, hey, this is in effect now. The next set of stuff we're going to talk about are in effect now. They are errata effectively immediately, and they don't come out obviously until the set drops. But a lot of it is just cleaning up text that was that were pretty incorrect due to translation issues or whatever you want to call it. There was a lot of wording issues, so they kind of fixed them. But the one I really want to talk about is the Cell deck, because initially Ginger Town was going to be a very powerful card if it wasn't touched. And ideally, if you're not familiar, for some reason, Ginger Town goes to your opponent's field, and then when your opponent, since you are controlling Ginger Town, you have the autos work for you. If your opponent plays a Cell card, you play 2 tokens. Now, because you're playing those with a non-activate main skill or non-keyword skill, if they play BMS, Black Mass Sand, you now have to get rid of cards, 2 cards for every card you play. And if they play more than 1 Cell card that turn, you're potentially losing your hand every turn. You can't do anything about that. So the fix to it was to the leader itself, and you could only play green Android cards. Now, the problem with this, though, is when Ginger Field is on your opponent's field, it prevents you, as a Cell player, from playing counter cards that are on extra cards. It might be counterattacks, but it prevents you from using key, like you can't use Dormant in the deck.
Yeah.
So now you only have like 2 cards. One, I think, is Android 17. There's one to Cell. There might be another 17 as well. But none of them are really Floodgate control cards. So a lot of people who are kind of accustomed to Floodgates are no longer, don't have those as access. Now, yes, Cell does have a green-yellow archetype, which maximizes the blocking and then removing cards underneath it to keep it alive so you can block multiple attacks, which is great. But I just think it's funny that the errata also killed part of its own archetype, so you don't get access to the Spy Bot, which was cool. It was a little cool tech to steal an opponent's keyword skill to give it to yourself so that they have it, but it's gone. And I think the easiest fix would be just say your deck has to be green battle cards only, or non-black cards, just to kind of allow you to play, if you wanted to play Floodgates, kind of feel a bit balanced. Because I feel like this deck goes against a super aggro deck, it's not going to hold up to anything.
Yeah. It should just have the same line of text that Red Sin has now, where it's your deck can't include black cards or black battle cards, I think is what it says.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that would fix a lot. That would introduce and open up the possibility that they could use the Boo Floodgate. It opens up the opportunity to use additional counterplays.
Yeah.
If you're running a Unison, you could run Doria, Kakunza. You would have a lot more flexibility in the deck. Another viable solution would be to errata BMS and Kawitsakai, to say non-token battle cards.
Yeah.
So they can't, we've banned cards in the past because they limit future design space, but we have 2 cards that exist in the format which are limiting design space and killing architects on arrival because they don't want to errata BMS and Kawitsakai, so they're going to errata this leader into oblivion. Like, the leader is just, I think the deck will still be fun, like Bancroft said. you've got the yellow-green blocker aspect that you can kind of lean into to create some defense. The deck has a field wipe built into it, but you are going to struggle so much by not having access to just good green cards. Like it drives me wild that they would ban certain cards because they're limiting certain spaces, but then decide to keep other cards around their limiting design space.
Yeah, when they could just more eloquently errata the leader and everything would be fine. Like they don't have to take a battle axe to it,
No.
So and for those who are curious, there's other options obviously in this deck. You could play 4 cells or destroying Kamehamehas, 4 full power Kamehamehas, and those combined are really good extra cards that will allow you to benefit power in this deck. But yeah, because I'm rereading Cell's full power Kamehameha, I forgot that you can pop any card. Doesn't matter what the cost is. Or you can choose to get past certain keyword skills, which then you can use other cards to get rid of. Because there's no counterplay in the deck initially in this set. So you have to resort to using older Android counterplays, and a lot of those are really expensive unless you are playing certain cards like Unisys to reduce your cost. So, but yeah, that's the Cell. Like I said, it got hit. It was fun. We've had finally the 3 secret rares kind of drop. I think we're all in consensus that Sid is the best.
Shenron?
Yeah.
Yeah, Shenron looks amazing.
Yeah, Shenron looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. It opens up a lot of interesting lines of play for current and old decks moving forward. It's just a really interesting secret rare.
Like I like Mecha Gabor, but I think in the end I will always choose to play Kuber over Mecha Gabor only because Mecha Gabor can be counterplayed because it's reducing its cost to 1, so a lot of things that hit that can still snipe it. But if it does hit the board, it is protected, which is nice, and it does kind of like warp cards on whenever you attack or whenever someone attacks.
It's a secret rare that gets hit by Tyrannical and Desperate Measures.
Yeah.
So
Focused Breakthrough, Absolute Release Ball, like everything,
which are now staples in the format moving forward. It's just I don't see how that card is going to make any type of splash in the meta. Really,
I think green got a really good secret rare. Is it the best green secret rare? I don't know. It's a tech secret rare that can be, and a lot of green secret rares are, in my opinion, tech based. Was a lot of people tend to play depending on the deck. The counter, or they'll play Cell Max, just have a big old swing for 1 energy, and if it gets somehow popped, your opponent loses a life. But the new green secret rare can give your leader triple strike if it's a Sand, Earthling, or Manekian. And if you use that auto and you're afraid of losing your leader skills because it negates the skills, because if you use the auto correctly, put in the drop, then it goes to your Z deck, and then it gives your green leader a plus 20k power if it's not a Son Gohan childhood and negates their card skills. Okay, so then Z charge it. And some decks can benefit from you Z charging it and can possibly use it again if you are playing Surge early. But getting a triple strike for 2 energy is really good.
I think there's something to be said for the question of, is this better than Cell Max? But I think what this does do for the game is that it forces you to respect green leader swings, especially if they're Saiyans, Earthlings, or Namekians, a lot more. It's going to change the way that you as the player across the table kind of have to play against green. Traditionally, you don't really care about green's leader swing. You're more worried about big battle cards or cards with hand attacks when they attack and things like that. But while I don't think this is the best green secret rare ever printed, I think it's definitely probably going to be worth its price tag and worth including in your deck depending on what you're doing.
And this one did get a phenomenal, in my opinion, an amazing God rare art. I think it's fantastic. I love that some people kind of joke that it's like Bandai saying goodbye, but I think it looks great. I think it's fitting. And truth be told, I'm happy this was the God rare I love this art.
Yeah.
I love the approach they went with it.
This is the first God Rare that I really kind of want. I'm still not really willing to spend the money on it, but I'm kind of like keeping my fingers crossed that we pull it in our case. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Iconic scene from the anime. Beautiful foiling. It's the best one they've done yet.
So, with all that being said, that kind of wraps up the majority of things that are happening right now, at least what I think people were talking about. I know we're a couple days behind on it, but hey, there's been a lot of things happening and just couldn't get to it. But we have a couple things that I'm trying to work on. We'll have some new content coming down the road, not necessarily kind of covering the meta itself, but more or less maybe just old matchups, and not just in the card game, but in the show itself. So look forward to that. And I think that's it. I can't think of anything else really.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. Keep in mind, there's buttons, links. Check them out. Bye.